Hi, I'm Paul Sullenberger. In this video, we're going to cover the new CeramicSpeed Wheel Bearing Press Toolkit. Designed start to finish to simplify both the removal of bearings in your wheels as well as the installation of new CeramicSpeed bearings. We have everything from 8mm axle all the way up to over 18, 20, or even 25mm ID bearing sizes, covering the vast majority of cartridge-style bearings used in modern hubs today. With a nesting drift style set, you can have easy over-axle installation and removals, including the deep axle on a rear free hub body going over the drive side. This toolkit keeps in mind all the standards for both installation and extraction, using two different size palm nylon plastic material extraction cups designed to sit against the hub flange. There's also an end cap removal tool to make easy use of the press-on end caps that may become stuck and stubborn, and avoid the use of pliers to get them off. We'll now go through some of the assembly methods to go through an extraction as well as an installation on common hub sizes. We're now going to take a look at a common captive axle style that has press-on end caps. End cap, hard to get off by hand, and rather than punching it out or using pliers on the end, we're going to use this end cap removal tool. Measured for 21 or 19 mil, covering the most common sizes, you want to take a seat and see which one fits nice and securely. And then using a 4mm hex key, we just tighten this in place. And now you have a secure, simple method of removing that end cap, and you avoid scratching anything up. With the bearing available, we're going to go ahead and take a look what the ID measurement size is. Each of the bearing drifts are selected together by the inner diameter of the bearing. And then you also see a step down size for the inner diameter of the axle to be able to nest nicely inside the axle there. This allows everything to locate neatly on the 8mm shaft of the press body, and that way you have good, secure stability. So this one here, it's gonna have a 12 mil on one side, and we're gonna nest this straight through for pressing the axle out, avoiding the use of hammers. Then I'm gonna come in with the extraction cup over the top, sitting not on the spokes, but just against the hub body itself. And then the crown jewel piece, the threaded tool head with a quick release on it, allows us to slide it straight on and then secure the threads. And now it'll tighten nicely. You can hold both ends, and it's gonna pull that bearing and the axle straight through. Loosen it just a little bit, press in, and slide out. I'm going to pull off the over-axle cup. Now the axle and the first bearing are removed. And we can go ahead and we'll take the bearing off the end, and we can use the axle to press the other bearing out the other way. Now we've placed the axle back in for the second bearing. We're going to move the tool through to press the axle through, centered on it in the 12 mil, using the extraction cup, and then go ahead and place the tool over, and just before it makes contact, lock the threads in, and now we can twist this here, thread it on, press and release, and slide it apart. We have the second bearing out of the hub. When we're then ready to go ahead and press the bearings back in, we can go ahead and use the tool itself to center against the hub with a slight chamfer of the body. We can take the axle and press the axle back through. We'll take the bearing, place over the shoulder of the axle, lining it up straight and nice on there, and that's going to line right into the bore of the hub. And now we can select either through the measures or through the bearing size, clearly written on each drift which end will press into the bearing. So here we're looking at 15mm for the ID of the bearing, and we're going to find the one that fits the outside. This bearing here, written as a 61902, which we see as 1528, lines up nicely over the axle as well as onto the bearing face itself. Again, take the tool press, engage the threads, and just by hand, running on a CeramicSpeed bearing, it's going to press that evenly and smoothly into the hub. You feel the pressure start as it's reached the bottom at the bore. Now we can release the pressure, unthread a couple times, press in, slide out, and you can pull each piece back out. You'd now be ready to to install the second bearing and place the parts back together. You can then come back with your end cap, press squarely on, and then use your 4mm to release the end cap tool, and your front hub's ready to move on. We'll now take a quick look at the rear hub and how to work with that deep overaxle design. Now we have this deep overaxle design that can present some troubles when you're trying to press the second bearing in and have that captive axle in place. So for the first bearing going out, we're going to press using the axle itself, finding a drift here into the 15mm family that has a 12mm for the inner of the axle. Nesting nicely in there, gives a smooth interface so you don't damage or mar the axle. And now we can use the threaded body with the built-in hand, and this is all secure and stable, very centered, going to keep things from moving about. And again, we use our overcup that sits nicely against the hub body and not flat against the spokes, giving good stability. And we can go ahead, secure our threads on, making sure you get the threads nice and secured on there and tighten together. Now it's going to pull that bearing straight on out. We're coming out non-drive side first. So this hub design does feature a star ratchet that prevents the drive side bearing from being removed until that star ratchet's removed. So you always want to make sure you follow the hub manufacturer's guidelines for any small details like that before beginning. Extraction cup out of the way, and then go ahead and remove the threaded rod. And now the whole axle and the non-drive side bearing can be removed. You would then be able to remove your ratchet ring to access that drive side bearing being pressed out using the axle as you did in the first front hub. Now, for reassembly of everything, we can take the axle, being sure to place the correct direction. And rather than having a drift that doesn't fit over our extra pieces, we do include a special long deep throat drift to fit over, so that way you can make sure you're pressing securely against the bearings and not just getting stuck on the axle. We can now take the bearing for installation, placing over the bore, and this is going to go nicely over the axle hub itself, sitting into place. We have an appropriate depth for our drift. It's going to come together here. But first, we notice that there's a little instability, so we can actually use one of these little nesting pieces here. With the nesting drift, what we can do is set this in place here, and it'll center nicely on the threaded rod, so that way everything's stable and it's going to come together in a straight manner. Pressing the tool head on, and again, just through finger strength, we can press these bearings in as that tool head is running on a CeramicSpeed bearing, distributing the load nicely. Once you feel the resistance, you've reached the bottom. You can disconnect each piece, sliding apart. Check for any lateral play or looseness. Make sure everything feels like it's moving correctly. And then you can go ahead, reinstall end caps, your free hub body, and your wheels are ready to go back together. In the event that you're unable to use the extraction cups, we did include a very nice square, appropriate length punch to be able to get the first bearing out as necessary. And all the drifts that nest together feature an O-ring to secure them together to where the pieces will not just fall and disassemble on you. So no matter what the ID, the OD, or the hub design, the pieces you need are put together in their family of bearings, all by inner diameter size. This is the CeramicSpeed Wheel Bearing Press Toolkit, designed to simplify the maintenance, installation, and care of your CeramicSpeed wheel bearings.